And we're on camera now.
Okay.
Okay, so your name is Gayle Connor.
I am Gayle Connor.
Mm-hmm. And you're running for?
I am running for the office of mayor.
In the primary election.
In the primary election, I'm running on the Republican ticket.
Mm-hmm. And you have?
I have two opponents, Dale Seward and Cameron Yates.
Right. And where do you live? Don't give me the street number, just the street.
I live on Franklin Street.
Thank you.
Yes.
I mean, this is going to go out on the internet, you know, once it gets out there, who knows where it goes. Why do you want to be mayor?
I want to be mayor to give back, for one of the reasons, because this has been my lifelong home. Delphi has been good to me and my family, and I believe that everybody has a purpose. I also believe that this is something that the Lord has led me towards. I tell people I don't know if He's leading me to something or through something, but I want to be obedient to this process, and I'm actually excited about this process. When I decided to run for city council, I thought this could lead to something, and I've actually enjoyed the legal part of politics. I've enjoyed the learning, the networking, and I believe that our city has stagnated under the past couple of administrations, and we're going the wrong direction, and I want to be a voice for the people who live here.
Okay, what wrong direction are you going? Is the city going?
There are several spokes that I would say are wrong direction, and the major one is finances. Too much wasteful, reckless, negligent spending on pet projects and personal agendas. The current administration is all about the trail projects. Trails are fine, but they should not come above and beyond other projects that are more important, such as maintaining our infrastructure, replacing some of our worn out infrastructure.
And when you say infrastructure, what do you mean?
It's a variety of things. It's, of course, it's the basic two things, your sewage and your water lines. We have 4 bonds currently holding debt over the city in the tune of still $10+ million for water infrastructure and sewage. The water infrastructure is in pretty good shape right now for the new lines and things, but I think there's probably a lot of old line footage that's going to need to be replaced, and it concerns me that there hasn't been a cyclical maintenance schedule to take care of some of that.
So as mayor, you would try to get a cyclical?
Oh, absolutely. I would work with the department heads because they're the experts in their department, and work on a 2-year, a 3-year, a 5-year, a 10-year plan, so that we're not 30 years down the road needing to take down water towers to clean, feet of moss off of the inside of them. Yeah. It just needs to be something that's taken care of on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And currently our sewage infrastructure is pretty maxed out. There are some changes coming, but a lot of this has come at the cost of the residents. The rate hikes over the last several years have been significant. There are more in the works. It concerns me that the higher volume users are not paying what I would call their fair share.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe the current mayor has even had that first conversation with IPC, even though I've asked her several times, and her answer is always not yet.
Mm.
The sidewalks are in disrepair twice, once under Mr. Evans's administration and once under Miss Worling's. Pacer surveys were commissioned and paid for
Mm-hmm.
to determine and analyze the quality and the
Mm-hmm.
priority of need on the sidewalks. Nothing has been done. Our street department used to, I remember years ago, they were out there repairing so many sidewalks, replacing curbs and sidewalks on an annual basis.
Mhm.
That's something that needs to be on a maintenance plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I feel strongly that doesn't need to be outsourced.
Well, and I heard Monday night that there's no longer a 50-50 sidewalk uh, replacement plan offered to the residents.
I was going to check on that. I'm not for sure that that's exactly true. I think that we still have two plans available. I don't believe the council ever took that away. They moved towards to 100% replacement, and money has been allocated, appropriated.
But that's what she said at the meeting.
She did.
Yeah.
And that's what a resident that recently replaced some sidewalks in front of his property was told by the street department head. I don't know why that resident wasn't made aware that there is 100% coverage. Because I know that when somebody wants to do their own streets or sidewalks, they have to meet city code.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get going any farther, how old are you?
Old enough.
No.
I'm 61 years old.
Are you really 60?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
And you graduated from?
From Delphi in 1980, from Huntington College in 1984.
And what do you do every day of the week?
I am currently employed by Delphi Community School Corporation as a 5th grade teacher, and I am a volunteer tennis coach.
I knew we needed to get this out of the way. And you've lived here all your life, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah.
I was away for a few years. I did teach in Ohio for a few years, but this was my permanent residence. Yeah.
So, why would you be a better mayor than the others running?
The bottom line is I'm more knowledgeable and experienced than either one of the other two candidates. I understand the budget process. I understand the legislative process for resolutions and ordinances. I understand that there's only so much money, and you don't spend it all right in the now, that you have to plan for the future. You have to plan for emergencies and contingencies. I understand how local government works. I have networked and made some strong connections at the state level that have been very valuable, because it's better to have free advice from the experts than to pay an attorney for an opinion. I believe that Mr. Seward did sit on the council for 4 years. I don't remember him being too vocal or advocating for much. Mr. Yates has never served on the city council. I'm not sure what his knowledge is, but it can't be as significant and in-depth as mine.
Well, he was on the Board of Works.
He was, and he approved every claim that was put before him. He very seldom asked questions. So in my mind, he's part of the reckless, negligent spending that has gone on. Mr. Seward has even posted on a blog that he would have to hire someone to explain the city finances to him, and that's very concerning.
So, but you have been on the council.
I have been on the council.
You want to
I
talk
served
about
on the
that?
council just short of 3 years. I did step down from the council. I've been accused of quitting on the citizens. There's a huge difference between quitting what I would call, a group of individuals. There were some questionable decisions. There was a lot of wasteful spending, the violations of state statutes like the purchasing policy, with them acknowledging that they were okay with that. My integrity is more important to me than a paycheck. I stepped away. That doesn't mean I quit on the citizens. I have still been out there for people. I've been going door to door, talking to the citizens, listening to the citizens. I set up a time to meet with the senior citizens and went to them. I'm not sitting in a coffee shop or a sandwich shop asking the citizens to come to me. I am going to them. I'm listening to them. And I think that's very important, to be a public presence. Mr. Seward has accused me of putting on the people and not being trusted. I think my integrity speaks for itself. People know me. They can either accept, but the thing of it is to me is that I'm still advocating. I'm just doing it from a different seat. And sometimes you have to be discerning enough to know where you can do the greater good from.
Mm-hmm. Still writing. Yeah. So, do you agree with the way the current mayor has pulled together the comprehensive land use plan, the bicycle pedestrian plan, with committees that from people who some are not citizens of Delphi?
Yeah. I'll tell you that I was on the comprehensive land use plan committee when it was officially organized. I learned some very valuable information about the percentage of owner-occupied versus rentals and how that impacts a city's underlying tax base and financial situation. I didn't always agree with everything. It was interesting that one of the people on our committee, who's also a lifelong resident of Delphi and a businessman, said, we did this 20 years ago. We went through the process and nothing got done with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree that people that are outside of the city limits should have as much impact on what's going on in the city as they do. And it's a few people that have been handpicked and given, I believe, too much say in decisions related to the city.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that a zoning ordinance is now being developed. I mean, Delphi already has a zoning ordinance, but it's being revised by a committee. And some of those committee members are not Delphi residents. How do you feel about that?
Well, I've recently learned from the public access counselor that when committees meet, they're actually supposed to be noticed because the public should be allowed to attend. I do believe there's too much done in secrecy outside of public awareness, and that needs to change. Again, I'm not a strong proponent of going to people that are not citizens of Delphi. They're not as invested in the city. They're invested in themselves or other agendas. The zoning changes that are going in are concerning because from what I've read and researched, that a comprehensive land use plan is supposed to be zone specific for usage and not site specific. And when the concept plan for Burnbrae Farms was created, it was very site specific, and I also believe that's hindered some development in that area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, do you know about the open door law?
Yeah, I do. I know quite a bit. Actually, the public access counselor is one person I would consider in my networking group.
Mm-hmm.
Straight arrow, by the book. He doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. He tells you how things are by the law, not his personal interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And he expects to hold everyone to the same level of accountability.
So do you think that at this point the city government is transparent?
No, it's not. That's a watered down term because everyone claims to have a transparent administration.
Yeah.
No. When you choose to do things in secret and keep information from the public,
Mm-hmm.
that's not transparency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how important is that open door law, do you think? What would you do as a mayor? How would you handle that? Because, having to give notice to the newspaper, every year we send out, the Comet sends out the letters by December 31. Please give us notice of all your meetings. And certainly, I send out probably about 65 of these every year.
Yeah.
And So for us, it's very important, but I see things not being noticed a lot. And so, what would you do?
I follow the law. There's a reason it's called a law.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a suggestion, it's a law. It's not that taxing to send out documentation and to make people aware and give them an opportunity to show up, whether they have an opportunity for input or not in a public meeting.
Mm-hmm.
People want to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have something to hide, why bother to be so secretive?
So, if the meetings, if the meetings for the zoning, for the comprehensive land use plan, and the bicycle pedestrian
Mhm.
master plan, if those meetings were not held legally, do you think those meetings or those things are legal? How would you handle that as mayor?
I do know that what the statute states is that any business conducted during those meetings is not official business. The, the issue arises with the fact that government entities like the State Board of Accounts, the Public Access Counselor, are not punitive. They're not enforcement agencies.
Right, they don't have an enforcement arm.
They don't. So it returns to the responsibility of actually the city council to pursue some kind of enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
or to accept the responsibility that, hey, we didn't do this correctly and
Mhm.
we need to go back and do it again.
So if this zoning ordinance that's being developed in illegal meetings is passed by the city council,
Mhm.
and I only know of one city council member who is part of that development.
Mhm.
As mayor, would you move to rescind it? I mean, this is an ordinance. This is a law.
It is, and that is definitely an authority that the mayor has. I would, since you've made me aware of that, I can't just sit back and let it go. I would definitely have to take a look at it. I would ask questions. I would make sure that the law is followed.
Mm-hmm.
And if we needed to back up to square one, if I needed to resend something and start over, yes, I would.
Mhm.
Because it's the legal way to do something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
regardless of what the topic is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it might not be that the whole thing would have to be thrown out,
Sure.
but I, I don't know how they could adopt something, a law, that was done in secrecy, you know?
Several times I can remember, and these meetings that we held with city council are videotaped, so it's open for people to see. The other four that sat on the council with me acknowledged that they knew things weren't being done the correct way
Mhm.
or by statute, but they were okay with it. And one of them even went so far as to say, going forward, we will do everything correct. That's an admission of wrong. It's an admission of complicity, and that's very concerning.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am the mayor, whoever is elected to sit on the city council will be made aware of the training that is free and available in Indianapolis shortly after the general election.
Mm-hmm.
And they will have the opportunity to take part in that training, ask questions, and learn the correct and legal way to do things.
And would you encourage that training?
I would, and the city has funding available to cover that.
And if you were a mayor, more or less government,
I like to look at government in three things: information, communication, enforcement. I believe you start with information, you gather information, you research, you take your time so that you understand, you ask questions, and you know what you're doing. You communicate with people openly and timely. That doesn't happen now.
mm-hmm.
I mean, the agendas are put out maybe 48 hours before a meeting. This administration and the last one both promised to have things out on on their Facebook site, on their website, a week ahead for people to know. You can't make contacts. You can't do anything on the weekend. The meetings are on Monday evening. Communication is what builds trust and respect.
Mm-hmm.
And then enforcement should come as a necessity
Mm-hmm.
or as a last result, because this administration definitely micromanages. They legislate this city to death.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to the point where then you're looking at whether or not the legislation is being enforced.
So, the relationship between the clerk, the mayor, and the council.
Mhm.
Who's boss?
Technically, they're all elected officials, so no one is anyone else's boss in
Mhm.
that group that you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor is the president of the city council, which her role is to preside over the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
The council is the legislative and fiscal body that makes the budget, and they also make the legislation. The clerk treasurer is, her role is to pay the bills, send in the paperwork to DLGF, and make sure the accounts balances are solvent at the end of the year,
Mhm.
encumbrances. She does have some accountability with internal controls within her office.
Well, that's a state law.
It is,
Yeah.
and she is supposed to have, for instance, in an office like that, if there are 3 or 4 employees, a couple of them should overlap knowledge of work and position, and then one should be the internal control over another,
Mm-hmm.
so that everything is done by the book.
Mm-hmm. And is it appropriate for the mayor to serve as the internal control person for the clerk's office?
It's not even allowable.
But that has happened, right?
Yes, it has.
Yeah. So the council is the legislative body.
Mhm.
Is the mayor? Does the mayor have anything to do with that?
The mayor has no voting rights other than vetoing an action that the council takes.
Mm-hmm. And so it seems like right now, everything the mayor proposes, the council agrees with.
That's
About.
That's truthful, because you can prove that looking at their voting records.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how would it be if you were the mayor? What do you think it would be? I mean, you don't know.
I don't intend to micromanage. I intend to work throughout the month to create an agenda, and that agenda will come with input from the council members.
Mm-hmm.
No great decisions will be made outside of a public meeting, because that's against the law. The way it's supposed to work is, if a council member brings a piece of legislation to the floor, they're technically sponsoring it, and they're supposed to speak to why that piece of legislation is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they can vote against it later, but they're not supposed to speak against it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a voting process, 3 readings for an ordinance, 1 reading for a resolution.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor is supposed to make sure, she's kind of like the taskmaster that's supposed to keep the meeting moving and keep it on point with the agenda. The current administration, she talks 90% of the time. The council are willing to let her. The council does not come prepared and knowledgeable, and that will change.
And how will that change?
I won't be bailing them out.
Okay.
As when I sat on the city council, part of the problem was they just knew that I would be researched and ready and prepared, so they didn't come prepared. They always like to argue and tell me I was wrong with everything I did, but they were not prepared. They
Mhm.
were not knowledgeable about half the legislation. At times, one of the council members talked about random things and didn't even know of which he was speaking,
Mm-hmm.
and the mayor had to calm him down.
Well, but the council members right now do not bring legislation.
The
mayor does.
Correct, and they have the right to request potential legislation. They have that right
Mhm.
as council members.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of it is about your willingness,
Mm-hmm.
and how invested you want to be. And that's probably why my replacement excluded. He hasn't sat there long enough.
Mhm.
But the ones that have been there since 2020, I don't believe that they're very highly respected, because of the way they've conducted business.
Mhm.
Just basically rubber stamping whatever's put under their nose.
Mhm. So, if you were mayor, what kind of changes would be made that you can think of now? I mean, you can't know for sure,
Right.
but I'm wondering, I mean, would you keep a community development director? Would you keep 9 police officers, take-home cars? Um, you know, you have explained, and I'll probably ask you about this pretty soon, at the Monday meeting, that in fact, the city could be kinda out of money pretty soon. And so, what if you inherited that?
My last conversation with the State Board of Accounts, was very informative, because when I explained what was going to happen Monday evening with all of the requests for additional appropriations and the draining of the general fund, um, we talked a bit about the tax draw. And in the past years, couple of years, the tax draw for the general fund has been about 3.5 million, and that's pretty much what it takes to operate the city on a fiscal year.
Mhm.
If that is dipped into this year to finish out expenditures this year, then we could have a shortfall in December. Actually, the shortfall is going to be very noticeable when budget season rolls around in September.
Mhm.
Um, it's going to require the mayor to make some decisions. Whoever's sitting there, they're either going to have to downsize, to cut, or they're going to have to look at borrowing money just for operating costs. And once you do that, that's a rat wheel, the vicious cycle wheel that you don't want to have to go. You don't want to have to go there. So either way, there are going to have to be some tough decisions. I think, before any drastic measures are taken, I think you do a needs analysis. You see how many police officers you actually need to cover the schedule, how many vehicles you need. I am not a proponent of giving every police officer a take-home vehicle, especially if they live outside the city limits, which they're entitled to, and then, put the wear and tear on that vehicle to drive it back to work. As far as a community development director, I would take a look at that to see what return for our investment we're actually getting from that position.
So, a little more with the budget. I understand that the 2023 budget was developed and agreed upon in about 2 hours
Mhm.
last year.
Mhm.
And you were part of that, I
Mhm.
believe. In it used, I've been covering for a long time. It used to be two
2 days.
2 days.
Mhm.
Sometimes,
Yep.
one day was 6 hours and
Yes.
another was 4 or
Yep.
something like that. How did it get like that?
I remember Carolyn Pearson telling me when she sat as the president pro tem board of the council that budget sessions were usually 2 very long nights.
Yeah.
11 o'clock, 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
And they hashed out and they cut. The council, and that was one of the reasons I felt the need to step away too, because the percentage increase, when you're looking at offering 12% increases in salary, 5% increases, and people in this town are struggling just to put a meal on their table. I think I have a hard time dealing with that. But again, when you have 4 people who are willing to just give the mayor whatever he or she wants and please that person, they're not interested in being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. They're interested in getting the work done, getting it off their plate, and going home.
And it is the mayor's job to prepare the budget.
No, it is not. It's
Oh, is it?
actually the clerk treasurer's job, to put it all together and bring it before the council.
But I mean, the mayor is the one that develops it for the
to
council.
develop it, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the council is
Mhm.
supposed to, yeah, okay.
Yep.
So, let's talk a little bit about the Board of Works,
Okay.
if you're mayor. Currently, and the statute goes along with this, the mayor appoints the Board of Works
Yes.
members.
They're appointed members, not elected.
They're appointed, that's right. Um, and historically, for the last 3 administrations, uh, it's been whatever the mayor wants. There have been some times that, there's been some discussion about things, but then there are some times that people have been put on the Board of Works that they don't know what a site plan is, and they're supposed to be approving it, and, the claims, they approve the claims, and it's the Board of Public Works and Safety, although they approve the claims for every department. I don't, would that be the same with
No.
you?
Years ago, it was divided so that the Board of Works did peruse the claims, approve the claims for the utilities
Mhm.
and the police department.
Mm-hmm.
And the city council approved the claims for everything else.
Mm-hmm.
The water utility and the wastewater utility are not under the same budget that the council approves, because the council does not appropriate money to those two departments. Those two departments are self-sustaining based off of the revenue they collect through their fees.
Would you require a budget from both of those departments?
Legally, you're not allowed to require a budget, but state statute and also handbooks that are put out there for civic leaders, civil leaders, suggest to have a meeting at the beginning of the year with each of those department heads and establish an estimated budget at the beginning of the year. And I think that's just I think it's common sense, and I don't know why you wouldn't do that. Mayor Evans alluded to the fact that he had those discussions with his department heads at the beginning of the year, and they, looked into emergencies, contingencies, because you can't plan for everything.
Should those be public information?
Yes.
Have you ever seen a budget from either one of those?
No.
Yeah. Me too. So who would you put, not what names,
Right.
on a Board of Works? What would you be looking for in a Board of Works members, or the Board of Works members? Because you're one of them. The mayor is one of them.
Correct. There are three.
Mm-hmm.
And you need somebody with some business sense, with some fiscal knowledge. I would not set a member of the city council on the Board of Works. There are too many times when those individuals have to cross over at meetings and things, and with only 3 members on the Board of Works, you have to be careful regardless who the 3 people are, because anytime 2 of you get together to receive information, even if it's an interview, that's considered a meeting, and you violate the open door law if you don't notice that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you notice the meeting, it's fine,
Mm-hmm.
and make it available to the public,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little more concerning
Mm-hmm.
when you have those conversations. And the attorney that we had for the city council, when I first said on, he said, you really have to consider appearances too. And even though you may not be doing something illegal, it's how it appears.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that builds trust and respect.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but no, I would not set an elected council member on the Board of Works.
Mm-hmm. So you would pick somebody in business, and what else did you say?
Someone with some business knowledge and some financial knowledge.
Oh, yeah. And then would the Board of Works only approve for Public Works and Safety?
Yeah.
So it would go back to.
We would go back to the way it was.
Mhm.
And something else that concerns me, and I've talked to past Board of Work members about this, is that before they actually come to one of those meetings and sit there and approve the claims, which are usually hundreds of thousands of dollars,
Yes.
they meet twice a month. Legally, they are supposed to look at every accounts payable voucher. They're signing an allowance voucher at the end of those meetings that they have actually looked at the documentations. The correct purchasing agent has signed off. There is actually available fund money to pay those claims. And that's a legal document that they're signing, that they're putting their name to.
And do you think that's happening?
I know that it hasn't at times. I haven't asked the sitting members now. I question if it is.
And how would you remedy that?
Well, the information would be available at least a week ahead of a meeting, so that those individuals could have time to go through the accounts payable vouchers, ask questions, make sure they're properly signed off on. Because with the amount of paperwork that's involved there, there's a probability that someone's going to miss something, you know, and not intentionally, but a signature might not get where it needs to be, you know. If there's not available fund, then that needs to be pulled. You can't just push it through and keep running your budgets into the negative.
Do you know how much money the current administration has spent on legal fees?
I know that typically it was very minimal amounts of money that's budgeted and appropriated for legal fees. In the last probably 18 months, in July of 2021, the legal representation changed for the city of Delphi, and since that time, I believe the average has been around $3,000 a month for legal fees.
How would you handle that? Are you okay with that? Or?
No, I'm not, because a lot of it is excessive and not necessary. There are resources available at the state level to get the information you need, and it's free. And it is the expert, knowledgeable individuals who have been trained and they know what they're talking about. It's not necessary. It's wasteful spending. So no, I would not continue to contact the attorney, and I don't believe that I would have the attorney sitting in every meeting.
Do you know how much it costs every time that happens?
Well, it's, I believe, $200 an hour. It's either $150 or $200 an hour.
I was looking over the claims, and it's, you know, it's $300, $320, $350, yeah. And that's just to be at the meeting.
And I honestly think that something our city's gonna have to look at too is the possibility of going to 2 council meetings a month, or at least additional at certain times.
Why is that?
There are gonna be times throughout the year when there's so much going on that it's just too much to process in one meeting. And that's not really fair to the council, it's not really fair to the citizens, and it can be overwhelming.
Well, trying to cover that kind of thing, trying to write about it is kind of difficult. I had a thought. So, if you're correct, and the city is probably ready to start deficit spending, maybe ready, potentially, if that would happen, what would you do when you became mayor? I mean, you're kind of, you projected the writing on the wall at the Monday night meeting. How would you handle that? I mean, right now you've got, the city has a project out at 218, you know, and gonna run infrastructure out there, and you've got things south side, and all kinds of, you know, how are you gonna handle all that? I think the people would want to know.
Well, I can tell you that I sat on the redevelopment commission when the project at 218 came before them. The redevelopment commission operates off of captured TIF dollars, and right now they're capturing about $20,000 a year, which is all going to consulting fees. That's going to be a multi-million-dollar project, and annexation, and quite a few things that are going to be extremely costly. The apartment complex down here, the city's buy-in is roughly $5.5 million.
That's on Front Street?
Yes.
Okay.
due to the differential in what our market is for housing and what the proposed market will be for the rental rates for those.
Why would the city have any financial interest in that?
Why would the city have financial interest in something that's not going to give them a return on their investment?
But why would the taxpayers have to pay for something like that? I mean,
That's a really good question, and that's a question for the current mayor, and she is gung-ho about that, and she's already started the process, and she's spent money out of the appropriation that just went through Monday night to start engineering work and surveying work on that project.
wait, why is the city paying for that?
Why is the city paying for that?
I mean, a developer would be paying for
Yep.
that.
The fact that she's willing,
How do you know that?
it was in the claims
Okay.
Monday night.
Okay.
There was, part of it was to HWC Engineering and to another firm. There was some delineation work done, and you've also seen them around town. But I know from when Mr. Shelby Bowen, the first developer who has since pulled out, spoke at a public meeting, he talked about the city's buy-in would be about 42% of the $12.5 million project, and you can do the math and see that you're looking around $5 million or more.
Mm-hmm.
And it is concerning again because the city is not going to recoup that anytime soon. And it's very concerning where the location is. That's not popular either.
But what's the thinking about the city taxpayers paying part of that? I mean, don't developers do that?
Typically. Cities sometimes will, through the ROSI zone initiative and through some of the other incentives that are available, developers can pay the upfront costs for some of the things like infrastructure, streets and sidewalks and the line footage for utilities.
Mm-hmm.
But then they can be reimbursed from captured money that the city can, but that's usually a 10-year process. It's not something that happens overnight.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor is more than willing to put the city in that financial dire strait, and the council is more than willing to back her up and give her the authority to do that. She doesn't do anything on her own. She doesn't have the legal authority to do those things. The council has to give her the authority to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They're really the body that should be held accountable. And those things that are going on right now are not popular. I carried a petition. I talked to 100 people, got 150 signatures against the apartment complex in a matter of about 8 days. It's not a burden, a financial burden that people in this town want to bear.
Mm-hmm.
People are in Delphi because they want the small town feel. They want the small town value. People are not stupid. They understand that there is going to be growth. There is going to be some expansion. And some of that is necessary for us to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have to be at the excessive rate of 60 new apartments.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be at the rate of running infrastructure halfway into the county.
Mm-hmm.
And why in the world isn't the county taking advantage of that opportunity? If it's such a wonderful opportunity, why isn't the county shutting the city down? That's a concern too.
Mm-hmm. So, Delphi is considered, or part of Delphi, is considered a riverfront district.
Mhm.
Somehow.
Mhm.
I think by virtue of the creek or something, I don't know. And in that, the city can give liquor licenses. And at this point, the mayor is the person who does
The
that.
issuing agent.
The issuing agent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. How would you handle that? Would you do that?
I voted against that when it came before the council. It was the very first thing that came to us at our very first meeting, and incidentally, the current mayor brought it before the council.
Mm-hmm.
The research that I did, it's still questionable and debatable as to whether a creek can be used as the riverfront for that district. It's
Mhm.
also concerning that the mayor has a sign in a building that she owns on the city square offering a liquor license, a bar license is what the wording says, a three-way bar license as an incentive for renting her building. That's a pecuniary interest. That's illegal.
Mm-hmm. And so the city council was quick to pass a code of ethics
Yes,
after you carried that petition.
yes.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen any action with that? I mean, that sounds like it might be a violation of that code of ethics. I don't know. I haven't read it, but
Again, it's up to the city council to pursue enforcement.
so if they choose not to do that,
Then nothing gets done.
and as a mayor, would you bring that up to them, or?
I would work to rescind the whole Riverfront District legislation because it hasn't netted the city anything. There's been no interest. There really isn't anywhere along the creek other than the area that's being looked at for the proposed apartment complex for any kind of construction.
Mm-hmm.
The white building at 402 Washington that the mayor took possession of against my wishes is in a floodplain. She had grand plans to rehabilitate that building, get it fixed up, and really let the individual from Logansport that owned that off the hook because the city paid the back taxes. The city cleaned it out. The city is rehabilitating it, and we are now into that building, or will be shortly, $100,000, with the hopes of selling it and breaking even. I would have held the individual that owned it responsible or put a tax lien against it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have taken a money pit in a floodplain and thrown good money after bad that could be helpful to people who are hurting in this town.
And so you're saying that a business can't go in there because it's in a floodplain?
A business, I believe, could operate in there. That I'm not too sure about, but I know that if it were torn down, there could be no building, no new building on
Uh-huh.
that site because it is in a designated floodplain.
Mm-hmm.
Which also means the city is going to have to carry flood insurance on that piece of property until we unload it.
Okay. So what else do you want to talk about? We've
Um,
only been here 40 minutes.
That's fine. I do have a few other things.
I kind of thought. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do. I'm going to just see where I want to go next. We touched on finances. I think I want to kind of wrap that discussion up with the fact that Monday evening there was a public hearing on almost $2 million worth of additional appropriations.
Mm-hmm.
All three candidates sat in the audience. All three candidates had the opportunity
You mean
to
candidates
speak.
for mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Seward, Mr. Yates, and myself.
Mhm.
I was the only one that showed up with anything prepared to speak about. I had taken a look at the agenda for that night. I pulled the financials out of all of the resolutions that were
Mhm.
coming along with the additional appropriations and tried to explain to the council what they were doing to the city by, liquidating the general fund.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I was met with opposition. I didn't expect anything different. The mayor told me my facts and figures were not correct, even though she created the documentation for the meeting. I didn't make them up. They're also available on Gateway. Both of my opponents talk a big game on their Facebook posts that we're here for you, we're working for you. Speak up. Prove it. Actions speak louder than words. Neither one of you said a thing. Neither one of you questioned anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's very concerning. What are they waiting for? They had a golden opportunity to stand up. I'm guessing that they didn't speak because they flat out don't understand the budget
Mm-hmm.
and they're not comfortable enough to take a public stand. And if they're not willing to do that from the seat they're in now, how are they going to do that from the mayor's seat? Because it's not going to be a comfortable seat,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of who is sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
I have not stopped working for the people.
Mm-hmm.
I take exception with either one of them claiming that they're constantly working for you. I'm not seeing it. I'm out there knocking on doors, talking to people. I have already walked half of the town. and talked to people and listened to people.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. You can't wait until you're sitting in the seat to start taking action.
Do you think you're prepared to sit there?
I am more prepared than than both of them together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am more prepared. I have already taken action. I have taken shots from the mayor and 4 council members at the same time, multiple evenings, sitting in a city council meeting. And believe me, people are thankful for that. They still stop me on the street to thank me for taking a stand. They want direction, not lip service. They want honesty, not lip service. They want action. They want to know somebody's already working, not planning to work once I get the office.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very arrogant and self-centered attitude. I do. Our citizens deserve better, and I'm the only candidate who can lead this city in the direction it needs to go for the next 4 years.
I kind of want to go back to transparency a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
except I can't take notes and talk at the same time and remember everything.
Yeah.
How would you communicate with the public? I assume that you would communicate with the
Yeah.
public. What would be, I mean, right now there's a big push, it seems to me, from the city to use Facebook,
Mhm.
but not the newspaper.
Right.
And would you do that, or how would you handle that?
I think there's more than one way to communicate with people.
Mhm.
The newspaper is definitely preferential to, quite a few people. The Facebook and online social platform is also, preferential to certain people as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to use multiple sources of media. At one time, the city had a call program where if something was going to change about the trash pickup or the streets need to be you got a robocall, technically a robocall, letting you know that this
Mhm.
side, that on this day this side is being cleaned off. You have to have multiple means of communication, but it has to be timely. It has to be the agendas, and not just the page that says tonight we're going to talk about this. The whole agenda, all of the documentation needs to be published online in different different avenues, not in the paper, the whole thing, but there has to be a way for the people to
We
know.
make you pay for that, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of complaints. I show up at a meeting and the next thing on the agenda is resolution 2023-4. They have no idea what it is. They've had no way to access that. What are we hiding?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the taxpayers elected these people.
Mm-hmm.
Their money is being spent.
Mm-hmm.
They deserve to know what's going on, and there's no reason to hide it. They deserve the opportunity to ask questions.
So, how do you feel about the proposal to register landlords' properties? I'm not sure I said that right, but I think you know what I mean.
It was really a 2-part proposal because the registration was part of it, and then the inspection part of it
Right.
was another part
Right.
of it. I guess I need to talk to a few more people, and I always like to look at what other cities our size are
Mhm.
doing and
Mhm.
look at their legislation
Mm-hmm.
and talk. I make a lot of phone calls
Mm-hmm.
throughout the year just as a private citizen,
Mm-hmm.
and find out things. I'm not so sure that the registration part of it is a bad thing. I don't know why people would have to pay to do that. I think it could be a safety thing to know who's where. If there's a